and that concludes another successful all-in event for All Elite Wrestling. AEW does it again. I spoke about the pay-per-views and the level of success and the match quality that AEW presents previously. We talked about how WWE, I think, has a knack for being able to progress with its storytelling, involving all its stars in long-term storytelling. With AEW, it does have its faults at times, but the one thing I can always remain confident in is a quality pay-per-view. What is going on, everybody? My name is Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another post-show reaction, and obviously, in today's video, we will be talking about All In London. And obviously, the main talking point, the one thing that everyone was talking about the most heading into this pay-per-view and now coming out of it, is Bryan Danielson. And what was billed as a title versus career matchup, Swerve Strickland defending his All Elite Wrestling Championship against Bryan Danielson, who was putting up his career in this matchup. Obviously, if you kept up to date with a lot of the videos that I've been producing these last couple weeks, you would know I was kind of flip-flopping. Initially, I thought that Bryan Danielson would win the championship, and then I kind of thought about it, and you know what, why wouldn't they put over Swerve Strickland? Bryan Danielson has always been the kind of guy who's willing to put the business first. So if you saw the predictions video that I released a couple days ago regarding all the matches of All In, you would know I had selected Swerve Strickland to defeat Bryan Danielson. But man, before we even talk about the outcome, and if you're watching this video, you obviously know what happened. If you saw the thumbnail, you know what happened. But what a match. I mean, it had everything. It had everything in terms of athleticism, match quality, storytelling, drama, emotion, everything you want. If you asked me, at the end of this pay-per-view, if there was one match that I'm showing to someone who isn't a pro wrestling fan, someone who's not really interested in the business that is sports entertainment / pro wrestling, and I needed to show them a match in order to hook them, that main event was it. Bryan Danielson coming out to the final countdown, and what I thought would be the last time, hearing that crowd invested in every word and every lyric of that song, and to see Bryan Danielson come down and greet his wife Bree. Obviously his children are there front row, and you can just see it, you can feel the energy. Bryan Danielson in his element, in his domain, where he belongs. Swerve Strickland comes out and it's on. The crowd is already kind of split. Some, obviously many of them actually, were chanting along Swerve Strickland with the whole whose house, Swerve's house deal. But as the match progressed, it clearly became, apparent that the crowd wanted Bryan Danielson to win. There was a lot of near falls, a lot of false finishes. Again, I stuck with my word. I thought Swerve Strickland was going to emerge victorious. We even saw an interference by Hangman Adam Page, who was, of course, a rival of Swerve Strickland, desperately wants to get his hands on Swerve Strickland, which led to that near fall of Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland. The back and forth was tremendous. It was everything you could ask for in a main event. It had that big fight feel. It had, like I said, the drama, the emotion, the intensity, but ultimately, Bryan Danielson does the unthinkable one more time. He wins the AEW World Championship, something that some people, many people really, myself included, didn't think would happen because of his position on the roster. He's a guy who doesn't necessarily need the championship. Bryan Danielson is a made man. He is a legend in the business. He is one of the greatest of all time. The title itself really needs him more than he needs it. And I think Swerve Strickland did an admirable job as the world champion. He had one of the better stretches as a world champion against the likes of Samoa Joe, Will Osprey, Christian Cage, who we will get to in a moment. But Bryan Danielson, this is it. We obviously knew that this was going to be like a farewell tour for the American Dragon, but we are now reaching that final leg of the race, the final farewell for Bryan Danielson. Now that he's the world champion, I'm suspecting that once he drops the championship, that's it. Obviously, because this was the matchup that he put his career on the line. So I feel like it's going to be that story of the next time I lose, very similar to Ric Flair in 2008. The next time I lose, then I hang it up. Then I call it a career. and I go home and I enjoy my time off with my family. That's what I think it's going to be. And if you kept up with some of the videos that I had been producing, you would know in one of them I did mention that Bryan Danielson could win the title and potentially drop the title at Wrestle Dream, which is taking place in Washington, his home state. You already won the title in the main event of one of the biggest shows in company history in Wembley Stadium. What better way than to call it a career in your home state of Washington? I think that's ultimately what we're going to be doing, but that's down the line. Let's worry about the here and now. Bryan Danielson had a great match, great showing, fitting of a retirement matchup, but we are in store for more with Bryan Danielson. We know that Darby Allin has a championship opportunity coming up. We know that Christian Cage, who won the gauntlet match, has a championship opportunity whenever he chooses. So maybe Christian Cage is the guy to unseat Bryan Danielson as champion. I don't think that's where we're going, but hey, who knows, right? AEW does it again. And at the time of this recording right now, I believe they're doing the whole All In, post-show conference where they interview Tony Khan and the wrestlers. So barring anything big happening there, we're not going to miss anything there. But All In obviously wasn't just centered around the American Dragon, although it was billed as title versus career, the final countdown. We do have other matches to address, one of which I knew was going to be a highlight of the night. I knew it was going to be one of the better matches because of who was involved. We had the American Championship, MJF defending his title against Will Osprey. The name in itself, right? You look at who was involved, you look at the build, and heading into this pay per view, if there were two matches that were the selling point, the reason why you should buy this pay per view, of course, it is the AEW Championship, the main event, and it was Will Osprey versus MJF, which told a great story of two competitive forces, two of the best and bright stars that AEW has to offer. You saw the war of attrition between the two as one was nursing a back injury, the other was nursing, all these other injuries that they had sustained, being an MJF. And I really enjoyed the back and forth that we saw between Osprey and MJF. There was clearly a competitive nature to the matchup, but it became a little personal between the two. The clashing of styles, the clashing of representations, not only because it was that of, the United Kingdom's, the England's hero in Will Osprey, and then the American hero in MJF, but it was just one of the more heated matchups of the night, ever since from bell to bell. But Will Ospreay would emerge victorious. He would get rid of the American Championship and bring back that international title, which again, it's fitting of him. I'm glad that they went that route. It was a great matchup. It was a great story that they told. I'm curious to see where we move forward with Will Ospreay, because I think for MJF, of course, it's seeming like a transition to a Daniel Garcia feud, which should be fun in its own right. Reports were saying that Garcia might be heading over to WWE. Obviously, I don't think that's the case. He's going to stick with AEW for a little bit longer, have a feud with MJF that will hopefully elevate him to that next level. And we talk about next level. I want to talk about that gauntlet match. The Casino Gauntlet match, up until the last three matches where we saw, Osprey and MJF, the main event, that Casino Gauntlet match was my favorite heading into those main matches. We saw the likes of Orange Cassidy. We saw Kazuchika Okada, obviously, in the early stages of the matchup. Well, what about surprises like Nigel McGuinness? And obviously, I don't want to brush over Nigel, but that debut of Ricochet, who got to keep his name. He got to keep the Ricochet name that he was associated with in WWE. Great showing by Ricochet. Awesome first appearance for him. I'm so excited to see what he's able to do moving forward. Maybe he's having a title match against Will Ospreay for that international title. We know there's history between the two, not only in New Japan, but just throughout the Indies, Rev Pro. I'm looking forward to it. So much to look forward to in AEW. And not only that, but let's dive back into the Casino Gauntlet match. The winner was Christian Cage, who of course had a match earlier in the night in the triangle, excuse me, not triangle, but the trios ladder match for the trios championship. He and the Patriarchy would lose those titles. But when we saw the introduction of Killswitch, which, interesting enough, was introduced as Luchasaurus. I don't know if a lot of people caught that. Ring announcer Justin Roberts introduced him as Luchasaurus. and out comes Christian Cage to follow. Christian Cage takes advantage of the destruction, the path that Killswitch left, and wins the matchup. Christian Cage, one of the best characters, one of the best gimmicks and wrestlers on the roster right now. Again, keep an eye on him. We're going to put him to the side, though. I don't think we're going to have him, go for the title just yet. Put him off to the side, right? Talk about championship matches. When we talk about the women, both were highly anticipated. We had Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker, and we had Toni Storm against Mariah May. I don't want to have to choose, but if you made me choose, I think the Mariah May Toni Storm match was better. Not to say that Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker was bad, but the story that we had with May and Toni Storm was so in depth. It was well told. It was early in the night too, so it wasn't like the crowd was suffering from early burnout. The story that we told there, Toni Storm obviously was betrayed by Mariah May, her protege, her next up, if you will. And Mariah May taking full advantage of her heel persona. For God's sake, she slapped her own mother, which caught me off guard, and she really nailed into her too. But the match itself had the intensity, it had the level of anticipation that any championship match really needs in order to get going. Mariah May, the new women's champion. And of course, sticking with the women's division as well, Britt Baker unsuccessfully defeats Mercedes Moné, who retains the title, will hold that title for a little bit longer. As predicted, I think it was too soon to see Moné drop that title. AEW, though, does it again. Successful show. I think every match in its own way delivered. We had a sense of variety, whether it was the ladder match, whether it was the triple threat tag team match, the main event, the Osprey versus MJF match, the women's titles. I will say there was one match that kind of left me wanting a little bit more. I thought was underwhelming, but by no standards was bad, and that was the coffin match. Darby Allin and Jack Perry, I think, put themselves at a disadvantage just because of the level of hype that they have placed on the feud. And I think the placement of the match on the card was an interesting choice to have it become, the last match before the main event. Darby Allin and Jack Perry have been known to do these crazy stunts, and not to say that the spot off the ramp onto the table or the glass spot was anything soft. I don't know. I was left, wanting a little bit more. I thought it was anticlimactic, and obviously we got the Young Bucks involved towards the end as they threatened to light Darby Allin on fire. We had the return of Sting, who helped out Darby Allin. That was great and all in fun. But again, for the match itself, that really was the only match that I thought could have been a little bit more. But again, aside from that, I thought fun pay-per-view. I always leave, enjoying the AEW product in terms of its pay-per-view quality. Never really regret buying a pay-per-view of theirs. So I'm looking forward to the future, looking forward to see how we move forward with certain storylines, certain championships, and what's the direction we're going to be taking with All Out, which is just next weekend. We have Bash in Berlin as well for the WWE. No Mercy for NXT. Like I said, big week of professional wrestling, and you can expect me to be reacting and sharing my thoughts on everything pro wrestling related on this channel. Of course, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and talking about pro wrestling with me on this post-show reaction to AEW All In. If you enjoy these post-show reactions, please give these videos a like. Comment down below your favorite parts of the pay-per-view, which match did really left an impression on you, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling content that is produced on this channel. And of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. I'll see you guys tomorrow with another episode of the J Area Podcast, where I might dive in a little bit more on the pay-per-view itself and the current status of pro wrestling. But of course, I will see you then. Take care.